Hey guys, hope you're doing well. I am not done with the ARCANE reactions yet because I got a few more videos I would love to react to, and this is one of the videos that genuinely caught my interest. So without further ado, let's have a look on Disgusting True about ISHA from the ARCANE.
ISHA is a character that's been picked apart to death by the ARCANE community, and I'd like to step over her lifeless body and add to the beating. So it's no secret that ISHA is similar to Powder in her baby form. Firstly, both ISHA and Powder are introduced in the exact same way. They both have to make a big jump, and they both fail to do so. In one case, it's Vi saving Powder very intentionally. In the other, it's Jinx saving ISHA unintentionally. And this parallel sets up the difference in dynamics between both their relationships as older sisters. Jinx keeps unintentionally helping and inspiring ISHA through her revolutionary acts, through her inability to defend herself. And Vi kept inspiring Powder through intentional acts, coming towards her, saying, "You're good enough. It's okay that you made a mistake." And we see after the first few episodes with ISHA that she transforms from her own independent character into basically a Jinx wannabe. This comes through in both her design change, where she goes from her yellowish theme with her eyes and her legs to being full out a Jinx clone, and the yellow is no longer as present on her outfit. Similarly, the very first time we see ISHA with Jinx together after the time skip in episode 4, we see ISHA with bunny ears. The bunny in season 1 was representative of Powder's childhood and her innocence. It was given to her by Vi in the same way that Vi protected her and made it okay for her to still be.
There are so many similarities I didn't notice until this video.
Child, even after the death of her parents, but it was also taken away from her when she smacked her and it smacked out of her hands. She lost
really
her
interesting
from Vi too, because And the big obvious parallel between ISHA and Powder is that they look like they're the same age. Not only that, but ISHA has goggles which look like Clagger's. I mean, her design has a strong connection to
I noticed this one.
Continuing with the design cues, she's wearing a miner's helmet. Now, this is the same miner's helmet that we see Vi and Powder's parents wearing in their flashback, meaning that she was likely just working in the mines for Kroos. And to that extent, it makes total sense why Jinx, who represents freedom for the Undercity, would mean so much for her, because she's doing child labor in a mine. Another parallel between them is...
I'm still like waiting, what is the Disgusting True? Like, is it something like horrible, or...
that they had this big desire to be involved in whatever was going on around them. Now, for Powder, that meant getting involved in the gang's activities, striking back at Piltover, and similarly for ISHA, a street kid from Zaun, she wanted to get involved in the revolution that was getting back at her, also getting back at Piltover. But a huge difference in how this comes out is the difference in their parenting. Vi was very protective, intentionality. She didn't want Powder getting involved in things that could actually get her hurt, whereas Jinx let ISHA do whatever she wanted, and several times we see herself throw herself into situations where she can get hurt very easily. This pairs especially well with their character because both Jinx and ISHA have basically no sense of self-preservation. Now for Jinx, Vi was that sense of self-preservation. She preserved her for her. But since Jinx is not doing that for ISHA, we see it come out. Hold up. What do you mean Jinx doesn't have a self-preservational nature? Well, let's look at what she does. The way she fights is very reckless, and we've seen her 3 different times trying to kill herself. She had tried to kill herself with Echo, she tried to kill herself with Vi, and she tried to kill herself again with Vander.
Smile.
And she was only stopped each time by circumstance or other people intervening. And of course, as Powder, she was following the gang into situations which she was not equipped for. How does this show that ISHA's got her life to blow? Non-preservational instinct. Also like and subscribe while I'm here. Specifically her helmet. You may not have noticed it, but her helmet is always falling off whenever she runs after Jinx. And there's a very specific reason for this. The helmet represents protection, her ability to protect, and then her lack thereof in when she puts herself in these situations. So when she first meets Jinx, she runs after her, the helmet falls off. That's alluding to the fact that she's going to be vulnerable around Jinx.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, she's probably gonna be vulnerable.
The helmet is on, then she takes a big leap, it falls off because she's vulnerable. Jinx could shoot her here. She might die. But no, Jinx protects her and puts the helmet back on her, indicating that she's safe. She tries to chase after her, and the helmet falls off, giving a little foreshadowing that she's not going to be fully safe being around Jinx. So for example, next time it comes off is when she throws herself in between Jinx and Vi, and she's being very vulnerable here. She's not at all safe in this situation. And because of this act of closeness, we see that after the time skip in Season 2, Act 2, she doesn't have it basically at all around Jinx. In fact, it goes the complete opposite way. face. She has the bunny ears, which, as we've seen, indicates her emotional closeness with Jinx. She decorates
she
her
was
helmet,
such a
meaning the
cute
identity
kid.
she wants to protect is Jinx. And of course, her helmet falls off when she gets hit by Vi. Thank you for the child abuse, by the way. Good to see that Jace isn't the only one. Speaking of which, didn't he murder another child in this act? What is he doing, man? And her helmet falls off when she's getting Jinx's gun right before her final big sacrifice. Roll that back. What do I...
Also, was it really necessary sacrifice, right? Because if you think about it, it still blows my mind. The vendor basically like died so many times, right? Yet he kinda survived somehow the entire 2 seasons. Until the very end.
I mean by the identity she wants to protect is Jinx. So it's actually not just Jinx, the person herself, that she wants to protect, but what it represents to the entirety of Zaun. We see her throwing up the power symbol to the mural of Jinx. This one little shot here tells us everything we need to know about how her character has changed into idolizing Jinx ever since the time skip. She's wearing Jinx's colors, her leggings, she's covering her own face and thus her own identity, and she's holding up a power symbol indicating her reverence for
she's
revolution.
basically
In the
Jinx
montage,
2.0.
there's even literally a Jinx monkey right on top of her face. They're basically saying, hey, her identity is based on Jinx. She even goes out and acts like Jinx because it's not just
cool.
Jinx that she loves what she represents. And that brings us to her death scene. Why does she do this? Well, there's 4 different ways to answer this question: psychologically, motivationally, writing, and her pattern. So when I was a kid, I used to argue with other kids who had different politics than my parents because I already thought I knew everything about the world that there was to know. And I was
just like
righteous.
every kid.
I thought everything I didn't know was evil. Isha is at that age. She still has that kind of all or nothing mentalities on these different ideologies. She
Also, I gotta say, some adults having the same mentality till today.
can't see that, oh, Piltover people are hurt and the Zaun people are hurt. They're both hurt. But she's there and she's 100% into causes she doesn't fully understand. Just like Powder was when she wanted to help with the gang's escapades. She didn't really understand what the crime meant, but they both wanted to strike back at Piltover. Another pretty common fantasy amongst younger people is one of wanting to sacrifice themselves. I used to always have a fantasy about saving the school from a school shooter. And that was a fantasy that almost everybody around me also had when I talked to them about it. Isha is basically making that ultimate sacrifice here. This is the perfect opportunity to make my life, just a small kid from the Undercity, mean something. And so in that moment, she feels like sacrificing herself is the greatest good that she can do. Let's talk about her motivation. So obviously she loves Jinx, and we're going to get to that, but she also loves what Jinx represents. Because Jinx isn't just Jinx anymore, she's hope. Hope for...
Yeah, I kind of feel the more I watch the Arcane, it feels like that she's seeing her as a role model. Also, it kind of makes sense, right? Because she become like the very only person who treat her rather nicely.
For the entire Undercity.
So obviously she built some like emotional
connection.
connection.
And funnily enough, Isha may not realize this, but Isha is hope for Jinx. Isha
Also
represents
true.
the hope that Jinx has in terms of life now. When they're introduced, there's this song that
But
plays.
at the end of the day,
Dead inside.
But after that, Isha introduces her back to having hope
And
for
now,
a good life,
both
for
are
not
gone.
being dead inside. But back to my main point, she's not just sacrificing herself for Jinx, but she's sacrificing herself for what Jinx represents to her. Plot-wise. See, Jinx couldn't just go from being a traumatized teenager with BPD to this zany, fun, lovable person like she is in League, or whoever they decide to make her in her final form for Act 3.
Oh
She
my
needed
God.
a catalyst for that. And
I
Isha,
remember this one.
representing Powder, representing
so
her
fine.
child self that she reconnects with and then subsequently loses, is the catalyst that is needed for Jinx to become her adult self that we are going to see in Season 2, Act 3. Finally, Isha's pattern. Isha sacrificing herself has been teased before in the show, not just from how she's thrown herself sacrificially to protect Jinx several times. It was also teased by Ambessa,
I've discovered a 4th principle: sacrifice.
indicating that one of the 4 pillars of strength was sacrifice. What does Isha have in droves? It's sacrifice. But focusing back on her pattern,
Okay.
she's seen over and over again Jinx's destructive impulses. How many times how she's tried to kill herself, how she tried to let herself die with Vi, how she's thrown herself into fights that she couldn't win, like with Vander or with Rictus. And when Vander was acting up in the commune, who was the first person to step in front of him to defend him? It was Isha. I think it's amazing that this small child thinks that this giant monstrous beast needs defending. But that's her mindset. That's the mindset that she's...
I thought the meaning here was like, don't shoot this like big creature because like he's not as dangerous as he appears to be. But yeah, like overall I understood like at the very beginning that she is like problem seeker, but I never assumed that she would eventually, you know, like sacrifice herself and she's gonna be gone. I just didn't expect that we're gonna see some kid like, you know, having such a moment in the arcane.
She's always concerned with protecting, and in that sense, in Isha's mind, for all she knows, Jinx is just gonna lay down there again and let herself die. We see her laying on the floor, and Isha sees that, and she's seen this pattern before. She knows that Jinx has this tendency to just want to give up, especially when she's going through such an emotional time. The time she saw her give up was with her family, with Vi beating her down. And what is she losing right now? Her family, again in the form of Vander. And on the other side, Isha, she's always jumping in to protect. The very first thing we see her do is take a huge leap of faith on her own, unlike Powder, who needed Vi to do it. We also see her stopping Jinx from throwing away Stinkmaw, her beetle that she worked very hard to decorate, but she was just going to throw it away, just like we've seen her try to throw away her life. Isha's been here before. She knows this pattern. For all of these reasons, she decided to go and sacrifice herself for Jinx.
So is this like a fuck around find out? Is this the kind of thing?
The truth about Isha is that she was always going to do this. She existed to push Jinx into her final form for Act 3. She was always going to be her catalyst.
Yeah, seeing this profile picture, that's how I feel after watching the arcane. To be completely fair, I thought we're gonna figure out like some deeper lore that, you know, we might miss. But either way, this was a rather interesting video to kind of, you know, dive a little bit deeper into the characters and why they behaving in such a way. And I definitely like miss a few things that now in hindsight I can finally see, which is rather interesting. Obviously I've seen there were a lot of similarities when it comes to the Isha and the powdered Jinx, but I didn't know like they are that much alike. Yeah, really interesting video. Let me know what you think about this one. Hope you enjoyed the reaction and perhaps see you next time. Have a lovely day. Take care.